My name is Matthew Todd, and welcome to Inside the Scale-Up. This is the podcast for founders and executives in tech looking to make an impact and learn from their peers within the tech business. We lift the lid on tech businesses, interviewing leaders and following their journey from startup to scale-up and beyond, covering everything from developing product market fit, funding and fundraising models to value proposition structure and growth marketing. We learn from their journey so that you can understand how they really work, the failures, the successes, the lessons along the way, so that you can take their learnings and apply them within your own startup or scale-up and join the ever-growing list of high-growth UK SaaS businesses. Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm here today with Neil Fogarty. As always, I'll let Neil introduce himself and his company shortly, but I want to say I think there's going to be a lot of interesting conversation today, a lot of things I think entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders need to hear, especially with a lot of the kind of US media bias. And that's really what I'm trying to tackle with this podcast, is to show people different approaches to building tech businesses. So yeah, welcome, Neil. Great to have you here.
Hi, thanks, mate. Thanks very much. My name's Neil Fogarty. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Litha Group. And Litha is a pre-revenue deep technology product-led enterprise. So we're specialising in pscholinguistic artificial intelligence. And to date, we've revisioned psychology, psychotherapy, and conversation agents, e.g. chatbots. We've been building highly efficient functional components, a bit like smart Lego, where we can plug and play them into a variety of platform as a service and software as a service applications. We're at a stage now where a lot of the science has been completed. We're past proof of concept and prototyping. And as of today, we're in the final stages of migrating our virtual colleague technology into an architecture supporting the Internet of Things. And that first revolutionary product is called Brother, which is the Irish and Scottish Gaelic for dream.
Awesome. We'll dig into exactly what a psycholinguistic AI actually means, shortly. But just to give some context, how long have you been working on this idea?
We were in the research stage for about a decade, and then we progressed in 2018 into what we would call the development and prototyping stage. So there's a lot of revisioning and deconstructing what we felt to be dysfunctional in those three key markets. And it's 3 years of dev prototyping, and that brings us into where we are now in 2022, where we're now at the point of piloting the technology into what we would consider some good marquee brands.
Yeah, and I guess the question is kind of why has the journey been that long? We see a lot of startups kind of rushing to get out there to disrupt the world in as short a time as possible. And I'm not saying you were slow, but kind of why was that approach important to you?
Well, there's two things there. One, I think it's be careful of the investor BS, really. That if you haven't done it rapidly, if you haven't gone to market rapidly, then you obviously haven't got momentum. You're not committed to your idea. Therefore, it's not going to succeed. Therefore, we won't invest. And that's just tripe. That's just lazy investment. The reason why it's taken us this long is it's manifold. One is, if you're going to do psychotherapy, if you're going to put a psychotherapy product on the market to help improve the lives of people with anxiety, stress, depression, loneliness, addiction, if you're going to do that, you don't just lob a product out. And this is one of the differences between what you would call deep tech and shallow tech. So let's take the shallow tech approach to psychotherapy. You go onto GitHub, you find some robot code that's on there, you buy yourself a UX, UI template off Envato, put the two together, get it on a store, put it to market. Now, there are 10 to 20,000 mental health apps out there at the moment on the stores, 10 to 20,000.
Wow.
And there's only two that take up 90% of that market, and that's Headspace and Calm. So where's the other 10 to 20,000 minus two? And what happens is they've gone through that process of going for style rather than content, throwing out a CBT solution because it's the easiest one to get to market. People download it, try it, hate it, ditch it, and then that app fades away and that startup fades away. We went the other way. We went for the high-hanging fruit of finding the really, really, really difficult things to do and then doing them exceptionally well. So that took a lot of research. We dismantled the psychometrics market, identified where it was falling down, e.g. lack of context, e.g. Bundling in all these false fake badges of consultants and certifications, of almost alienating the user themselves away from the assessment, making the assessment overly complicated. So we had to dismantle that, and using a lot of solid research and solid science that's accredited and recognised in the market, that's what we used to build our psychology platform. So that was quite a few years in itself. Then the other issue that we had was simply the technology out there couldn't give us what we wanted. So in some cases, we've almost been marking time, waiting for things to come along. So as an example, we did work at one point where we used a lot of Python within what's called a LAMP stack. And we used a conversational AI framework called Rasa, which is heavily invested by A16Z. And what we found is that Rasa actually couldn't do the things we wanted it to do. We were at the very forefront of pushing the capability of Rasa, so much so that we were having to hack a lot of our code to get it to do things that Rasa couldn't deliver. And then 4 months after we'd done that hacking of our code, Rasa rolled out a new iteration, and there it is. And we got fed up with waiting. So not only did we focus on moving away from LAMP into what's called a MERN stack, where it's all JavaScript driven, so that the calculations and activity takes place more in the browser, but we also took a look at all the third-party tech that we were using and started to create our own versions. So we'd stopped relying on these other organizations. By the time you've done all that, you're about 12 to 13 years in. so that's why it came about.
No, absolutely. And I think I love the phrase high-hanging fruit, because, so many people are looking to kind of live by that mantra of that low-hanging fruit. And it's, as you say, it's that investor model, or pretty common model that you see out there, of getting the minimal thing out to market as quickly as possible. But the minimal thing doesn't mean it's the best thing. It doesn't mean it's the most appropriate thing for the problem you're trying to solve.
Well, if you take a look at your pitch deck, on your pitch deck, you're told to have your TAM, SAM, SOM in there, your target achievable market, the obtainable market, and the serviceable obtainable market. So what they're interested in is what is the minimum you can make, your SOM part. Then it's a minimal viable product that goes out there. And it's get a letter of intent, which means nothing, because it's just basically saying that, yes, they'll give it a go, but there's no commitment from us that we have to buy it in the end. So everything is always run to, quote, the minimum. And this is what your investor's telling you to go for. Whereas our approach was make it simple, make it beautiful, make it powerful. And that doesn't necessarily mean make it cheap and make it simplistic.
Yeah, I think that's a good message, especially within a field like this, where you're impacting people's mental health and well-being. But even outside of that, would anyone want to drive a minimum viable car? I don't think they would.
Would you like to go to a fancy restaurant, pay through the nose for it, and they say, we've partly cooked the fish, and while you eat it, we'll see if we need to cook it anymore?
Indeed, or perhaps take a flight on a minimum viable plane. We didn't have the engines.
Yeah, bring your own engines, because we're going to lean and we're going to pivot and we're going to all that kind of rubbish, rather than actually give you a product that you want.
Yeah, no, absolutely, completely agree. So I guess taking a step back before we kind of get into more of the detail about what you're doing now, kind of what led to kind of dedicating so much time to solving these problems? What were some of the motivators that kind of led you to this point?
The first thing that we were working on was internally we called it pink. It's a psychometric killer. And that's because if you take a look at all the psychometric products that are out there that are that they are almost entirely driven by originally what was called the psychological lexicon of words. And it was 18,000 words and phrases that were used to describe the human condition. And this is going back about 100 years. So it's not something we've just rattled off recently. But people then started to focus on 4,000 of these words, which were related to personality. And then over time, that got reduced down to 16 words, 16 PF. Then that got reduced down to 5 words, which is known as the acronym CANOE or OCEAN. And there's even a push to try to drive the definition of the human condition down to just one word, which is neuroticism. So there's this massive reductionism that's gone on. And what you're finding is these organizations are trying to shoehorn the human brain into effectively Excel spreadsheets. And then they would use these Likert scale questions of extremely at the one end to minimally at the other, usually on a scale of 1 to 5. I hate it when it rains. I strongly agree, I strongly disagree. Well, take a look at the human condition, whether it's done overtly or if it's done subconsciously in your head. Every question you are asked, you will predicate with 2 words. And that's what kills the entire psychometric industry, which is about $1 billion+ industry, and it kills it. The 2 words are, it depends. If you say, are you happy when it rains? It depends. Am I in a drought? Am I with a loved one? Am I dancing? Is it freezing cold? Is it in Warsaw? Which is where I'm from, which is why I feel I can say that. These are the it depends. And so what you have a library of non-contextual questions given to you in this assessment that from the service provider. Then they're using factor analysis. And the factor analysis basically says the first 8 people who answered the question, I'm happy when it rains, they said that it was I strongly agree. Therefore, we can assume that the next 2 will say the same thing. So it's now forecasting people's responses based on the first 8. Now, as you may know, with any of these kind of organisations that do research into creating those kind of question sets, they get hold of university students and they ask the university students the questions, and these are ranging probably from earnest to drunk to whatever. But that is not representative of an entire global community, and yet we take that small sample, university students, the undergrads there, and we then forecast it into how we will describe everybody. And so we said, well, that's just hokum, It's just not a valid way to do it. So we went the other way. We created our own lexicon, which is now around about 110,000 words and phrases, and within our heavily IP'd psychology engine underneath, what we're able to do is you could write 100 to 200 words about a specific circumstance. Let's say I'm going to the park. You could write 200 words about that. At the end of that, we would know your psychology with respect to going to the park. So it's contextual psychology. So do that across an organisation. How many different times in a day will somebody be worrying about an event, an interaction with a person, a circumstance? Each time they can talk their own AI psychologist, put their 1 to 200 words in. They'll be asked 1 or 2 questions by the AI coaching module within it. And then it will give them some insights and thoughts as to how they may want to choose to address that piece of psychology. So it's a psychology builder rather than just a mere hokum metric.
I see.
So that was the first product. And we were doing some work at, I think it was University of Dundee, and a psychometric company in Scotland actually tried to get our research closed down and get us kicked off the course. And that's when we knew we were on the right track.
Yeah, when you were kind of scaring the people who had a vested interest in the old model.
Exactly. So then you take it onto psychotherapy, same thing. The vested interest there is cognitive behavioural therapy. Lots of CBT therapists out there. National Health Service has spent over $4 billion on their IAPT service, and yet the National Audit Office, when it was allowed to audit IAPT, said it could find no evidence of value for money. So
Wow.
gunning for them and upsetting them. And then when you get into chatbots, oh man, I mean, where to begin there? But yes, we're irritating people in the chatbot community as well.
Yeah. So very much looking to challenge that existing model. So I guess, given that research that you were then doing, kind of what were the kind of the steps that kind of starts that productization process from that point?
To start with, well, one of the co-founders, Ian, is 40 years as a psychologist. So some of this has been my job as CEO to do two things. One, to get that information out of Ian's head and to turn it into something that's applicable with him. And then two is keep clearing the way like a minesweeper. So find the money when we need the money, find a client to talk to when we need the client, find a partner X and Y and Z. So I'm kind of clearing the way for the talent. I don't see the CEO of the business as, quote, the talent. And this comes back then to the investor myth is most VCs will expect to see the CEO in the room during those investment conversations, from the presentation, from the pitch, the Q&A, all that kind of stuff. They expect the CEO to be there. The CEO is not the talent. The CEO's job is to clear the way and make sure the talent can do their job. And so that's been my particular task. And so in terms of moving it from research into something that is, let's use the word commercial for that end. To do that, I'm bringing my commercial skills and my commercial understanding. Now, I set up my first SaaS company in 1997, and we didn't call it SaaS then because it wasn't a phrase. So I've been used to the concept of productizing products and services for 20 to 30 years. So when Ian says, I've got something that can do this, we then spitball it around and say, well, who would buy it? How would they use it? Then I'd go and talk to organizations who are deliberately pessimistic, I feel, because I want people to say, that sucks, and here's why. Now, if you've ever read Six Hats by De Bono, he talks about having mindsets, aligned mindsets in meetings. And one of the hats you wear is the black hat. And the black hat specifically is only there to look for the disbenefit of what you're suggesting. And that's the people we went to. So every time I went out the door, I specifically looked for people who would tell me that our idea sucked. And I'd say, brilliant, can you tell me why? And I go back to Ian and say, right, general consensus is, whilst we've got something that's super and shiny, it needs to do this and this and this for the client value. Otherwise, no one's going to buy it.
Yeah, I see. I think that's a really valuable approach that I think a lot of founders are probably too scared to do because they don't like negative feedback. They like that confirmation that they're on the right track. So they probably will, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, but they will lean into the conversations that make them feel good and probably shy away from, seeking out those kind of conversations, certainly.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my favourite bands is Jesus and Mary Chain. And Jesus and Mary Chain have built their entire record discography on the use of feedback. I think feedback is brilliant. And if you're going to go out there and people are just going to be nice to you all the time, those nice people won't buy what you're offering. Not until it is compelling. And it is compelling when it covers off all the negative people as well. So why waste your time going out there and getting those nice, pretty testimonials? Again, part of your investment pack. This client says it's lovely. This one says it's lovely. Why get those? Why not say, this client said it sucked for the following 6 reasons, and here's evidence that we've fixed those six issues and gone back to the client, and now they say it's lovely.
Yeah, that gives you good reason to go back to them and be challenged again and challenge them, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned, some of the challenges and problems with existing mental health services. You mentioned IAPS and it being proven not to add any value. I guess with that in mind, how you mentioned the kind of the deep technology, the high hanging fruit, but kind of how kind of widespread do you see your technology being? Where do you see it being applied? What is the vision for this?
Coming back to our pitch deck here, is that you are told, look for one problem, offer the solution, and then give your market analysis. But nothing in the world ever acts in isolation. So to say that if we can fix one problem with one solution just seems to me to be the most insane thing. I read an article that suggested that on the average corporate desktop outside of your Microsoft Office license, most employees now have got £350 worth of SaaS per month, SaaS products running on their desktop on top of Outlook. And yet when you take a look at them, a lot of them are very closely aligned because they're all corporate solutions sat on these desktops. Therefore, they must have some commonality. So why is somebody saying, oh, well, I can fix this very specific one thing, when you should be saying, I can fix 4 or 5 things at a stroke here. So that frustrates me. And a common discussion I've had with people internally, as well as people who want to be advisors or non-exec directors to our business, is that our expertise is horizontal. We're talking about psycholinguistic data. Now, that doesn't matter then what the vertical is that's plugging into it. Our particular expertise is the horizontal. So whilst we have set ourselves up to specifically approach blue light plus organisations, so fire, police, search and rescue, but also NHS, military. So, anybody who's helping people that's got high stress and high employee numbers, that's our own proactive sales push. However, because we are product-led, therefore it's about getting the product into the hands of the users as quickly as possible. We're getting contacts from people in the private sector, outside of the UK, all those kind of left field things that we are not focusing on ourselves. The PLG is getting these approaches. So it may be that as part of our strategy, that if we want to stick to our blue light plus focus, is that if other organisations want to partner with us to go into their particular sectors and use our technology, that's the way we may go, because we want to maintain this focus of our sales message going specifically to this one particular vertical.
I see. So you're not afraid to see where that technology could be applied to different sectors, or also B2C as well?
Well, yeah, as I say, we've done this smart Lego approach. So we develop components. And then what we do is you bring those components together to create a product. So when you take a look at Bruder, that's about 24, 25 of the components that we've built, that we've plugged together with a specific orientation. But we always maintain that the application of our technology is only limited by the ambition and the imagination of the client. So we've been approached by one organisation that have asked us the question, could we do a psychometric understanding of our entire supply chain? So that's every individual in every team, in every organisation that feeds into the supply chain. So you may have, for the production of a piece of manufacturing, you may have 20 organisations in the supply chain. They want to know, are they not just the best commercially, but can they work together? Because supply chain integrity is a massive thing. And it's like, well, actually, yes, we can do that because it is psychometric, it is relationships, it's emotions, it's all the things that we're working on. If you want to apply it in that way, yes, it can be done. We plug the blocks together in a different way. And
you're letting the clients drive that, which I think is the interesting thing.
Yeah, the background of the 3 founders is that we all come from a background of facilitation. So Ian has got a very strong psychology background. My background is business consulting. Michelle's background is in areas of compliance, but also in training and regulatory environments. But it's all facilitation. Yeah. So when you go and see the client, you don't go down that whole rubbish route of, so what's keeping you awake at night, etc. Some of it is future forecasting. If I understand the client, hi, I was reading about X in the paper this morning, or I was thinking about you on the way in, and I wondered to myself, what are you going to do in 2 years' time if the Earth does go up an extra 0.5 of a degree? And you just let them talk. And what you do is the same as our technology. You ask the questions, they orient themselves into a new understanding. And when they orient themselves into the new understanding, they then determine their own need. And when they say, can your technologies do that? The answer is going to be yes.
Yeah.
There's no point doing the hard sell with it. We know what we've got is unique in the market, and it is entirely unique in the market. In preparation for the conversation with you today, I thought I'd take a quick look on our good old friends at LinkedIn. And there's a conversational AI hashtag. And I went on there and had a read through. And every organization on there, when talking about conversational AI, chatbot building, no-code chatbots, etc., they're all talking about how they've done such a great amount of work with NLP, and the tech can understand the human. None of them have said we understand the psychology of the user in that conversation. So we know we have something entirely unique, and that it changes your attitude. When you go into an organization as a startup, we go in there knowing that they need what we have.
Yeah.
And so the way we deport ourselves in those conversations is probably different to somebody who's produced one of the 10 to 20,000 mental health apps. I mean, they're whistling into a very strong hurricane there. We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And so we have a different attitude when we go in. It doesn't make us arrogant, it makes us comfortable. And I think as a startup, when you're going into these organizations, you have to, if you're going in there saying, I want you to tell me what you don't like about what we do, that completely shifts the conversation, because most people like to complain and like to, what's the word? They just like to, I'm not going to say insult, but they like to do your product down. They have to critique it. Yeah. So invite them to do that. But then say, okay, well, I mean, I'm not here to sell you anything, because obviously, as you've just told me, there are 7 things that you think are flawed with it. When I've done those 7, I'll come back and we'll have another chat. And that is it. You know, it's just a different attitude that you have. You don't have to beg them for your business. You're going to make a product that's so compelling that they'll come to you.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference between trying to make that quick sale and probably not going into those conversations with confidence, with genuine, kind of knowledge that you can actually help them, or the technology can actually help them. And I think that then probably leads to sales cycles that I see with a lot of, startup founders going in without that confidence, where they're almost, they see it as a numbers game. They're only expecting to close a certain percentage, and they just move on from the clients that, aren't a good fit at that time.
Yeah, and you're asked the questions by the investors. What's your sales cycle? I mean, it's not our sales cycle; it's the client's buying cycle. So when you're asking me the question, "What's your sales cycle?" I can say, "Oh, it's 3 months." They go, "Oh, that's great. That means we'll see a revenue point at X." The reality of it is that we're talking to a client at the moment that's got a very complicated procurement process, and they've told us, because we're the only ones doing this, they'll skip part of the process for us. So if I was to go based on the formal off the rack rate, it's going to be 9 months. But the reality of it is, it could be 9 weeks, it could be 9 days. And with a PLG model, where we're putting it into the hands of the consumer, the corporate PLG model means that we get paid straight away. It'd be small users, but that gets paid straight away. So it's just some of these old formulaic questions you're being asked are not suitable for the new world, and that would be one of them. And the other one is that as a tech startup, if in doubt, discount, and that's wrong. If in doubt, work on your product, work on your messaging, truly understand the client's pain and make it compelling. Because if they've got a big enough pain, they'll pay the money.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of people that struggle with, marketing, with getting the word out there, they don't know their customer at a deep enough level. And I love what you were saying about, don't ask what my selling cycle is. You should be asking what my customer's buying cycle is. And that, I think, is the right perspective to take. You can't think it's all about you and your startup and your product. You've got to bear in mind it is there to add value to your customers.
Absolutely. It should. A sale is a product of change and causes change. So no sale is ever in isolation. So when you're asking me how long the cycle's going to be, well, if I sell this product into an organisation that's got 15 mental health first aiders and 2 occupational psychologists, then there straight away I've got the user buying influence that may delay my sale. So while I think financially it's compelling and the CEO thinks strategically it's great, and you've got a whole bunch of employees who are desperate to talk to the tech, you've now got a cadre of people who will block it. So unless you actually are mapping every single sale strategically to understand the buyer, and that can go into the B2C context as well. I mean, you're right. B2C, if you're selling to the husband or the wife, there is somebody who's got a 50% say in what that sale is. So so even that has got its sales cycles. In terms of B2C, our technology, the AI psychotherapist, is being made for free to everybody in the world forever. Wow! So everybody will have access to better mental health, and it will be an AI psychotherapist in your pocket, and that is for free. So our B2C approach is that we're not there to rip the consumers. We're there to add value to the corporates, and so that the consumers gain it for nothing.
No, I think that's a great value-based model, purely from the business perspective, but I think, ethically as well, for such an important topic and area of change. I think, it's important to make this, accessible in the right way. And I think with genuinely disruptive technology, genuinely kind of deep technology, as you've described it, I think you don't have to kind of play that game of trying to, monetize early, as we've talked about a minute ago, and, almost just push it out there to kind of, prove a particular type of demand, to investors, whilst that curve is likely going to drop off a cliff very shortly.
Yeah, and you're also, it's part of that crapshoot for the founder, is find where each VC is in their funding cycle, and what's their portfolio. We had one person contact us from a VC who'd seen a pitch we did. We were awarded in 2020. We were the regional social enterprise of the year for Barclays Bank because of our work in democratizing access to psychotherapy. And part of that, you were then invited to a pitch event. It was one of these awful lockdown blind Zoom pitch events that we all did. Yeah. And so I did the pitch, and I was pitching because we want to know if we've got our messaging right. And the critique that we can get from those kind of blind events is very useful for us for our messaging. So I did this blind pitching event, got contacted by one of the VCs that was there, said, very keen to talk to you, very interested in your work in the psychology and linguistics. Let's talk. Please send me the pitch deck that you showed on the day. Sent the pitch deck, got in touch with them, just as a courtesy, because I think it's courteous when you're having a conversation with somebody. As a courtesy, I phoned them up to ask them, do you want to have a chat about it? Oh, no, we've invested in another conversational AI company, and I couldn't possibly invest in yours. I was just curious what you were doing. And this is a renowned UK VC. And that's just wasting my time. Okay, I mean, you're going to see stuff on a pitch deck, and if you can work out what the various pictures of dogs and brioches are on my pitch deck, then fill your boots. But it's just disrespectful of my time. And one of the things that you'll find as a tech founder is you'll get a lot of people from a lot of VCs asking for a chat with you, and they're the researchers, and their job, their KPI, is to fill their diary. That is it. So I would start, every time I was approached by these people across the likes of LinkedIn, I'd say, we're pre-revenue, we haven't got client validation, and I'm busy. And they'd say, no, that's fine. It's only 20 to 30 minutes. And they'd chivvy and chase and chivvy and chase. And because no meeting is ever a bad meeting, you say yes to them to start with. And then what you find is you go through that conversation, and at the end they say, yeah, the problem is, you see, is that you're pre-revenue and you've got client validation, so you're a bit early for us at the moment. What, the thing I told you at the start?
Yeah.
So it's just a disrespect that they have. They think, again, it's coming back to this being comfortable in yourself and having that kind of confidence in yourself, is that these people are chasing you to waste your time. And so always be asking yourself the question, is what I'm about to do next going to add value or get me to that goal that I set? If I've got a product launch date of December the 1st, will this next meeting for 30 minutes get me there or not? And if it doesn't, sack them off. And if they keep persisting, then they aren't listening, and they will never be the right kind of organisation for you to work with.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I think a lot of founders, and I think largely due to kind of a lot of the tech media, they seem to think that getting a VC, getting into that, fundraising kind of multi-level approach and system, if you like, is the only way that their startup can be externally validated, but also be sustainable. I don't think most founders are willing to put in the work and say, well, if we don't get this funding, we're still going to be here next year and the year after and the year after that.
I was the conversations peters out at the moment because we're waiting to get the next product stream running. But I had lengthy conversations with a corporation. It was to pitch the tech to them. They've got somewhere around about 500,000 employees worldwide. So, it hits kind of the sweet spot for us in terms of high stress, multi-border, multi-site, and high employee numbers. And as I got talking to them, I said, did you know we've got a corporate VC team? I said, no, I didn't. Very interesting. So I got talking to them, and they would provide funding into your tech business because it aligned to what they were looking to achieve through the ESG commitments, environmental, societal, and governance. So it complied with that. They're very interested. But then they would introduce us to their 110,000 clients worldwide. So I thought, well, that saves me a lot of work.
Yeah.
As well. So I fall to talking to a few people in those investment circles, advisors who are meant to be independent and objective. And they said, oh, you don't want to go with a corporate VC because VCs don't like investing in you if you've got a corporate VC. I thought, well, if I've had a corporate VC put money into my business and introduce me to 110,000 clients worldwide, what do I need a VC for?
Yeah.
And it's just almost like this kind of like a lazy arrogance with them that, this is the way you should do it. It's the reason why we did Python work to start with is because we were advised to by Python developers. The reality of it is when we worked it out ourselves, we wanted JavaScript. People will only offer advice to you as a tech founder, unless they're mentors, slightly different, but people will only offer advice to you if there's something in it for them. And so it is very important as a tech founder to be very protective of what you have. You've got a brilliant asset, e.g. the founders and their brains and their ideas and their ambitions, and you've got people out there who want to profit from you. So just be mindful of the advice you're given, because it ain't all what it seems.
No, and I think people profiting from you, you've got to remember that is, as you say, that's what they are in it for. So the direction they want to take you in, what that next fundraise is or isn't, the markets they may want to take you in, the product direction could be entirely different to your vision and to what you want to do. And you may give up that control if you're not careful.
Yeah, again, you've got after about 11 years of bootstrapping, and that was probably about 1.6 million pounds that we'd bootstrapped up till 2019. Even to at one point where Michelle, my wife and a co-founder, she was hustling and selling furniture out of our house to keep us going.
Wow.
And it was trips to the food banks. In fact, I've still got in the cupboard opposite me here, I've still got a tin, because they do them, a tin of Sprouts, which is never going to get opened. But that tin of Sprouts came from a food bank, and that is there to remind me that every time I say I've had a bad day, no, we had some really bad days, because we had a tin of Sprouts in front of us. So we worked hard on bootstrapping it. And in 2019, as we suddenly started to get into extra costs, things like having to look into the legals and the IP, things that you don't really consider when you're doing your tech startup side of it. As we were edging away from the research and more into the dev, there was costs. And so we got ourselves an angel, and they put in some money, but then disproportionately we're trying to influence what the business was doing. You need to have these as your accountant. You should talk to these about doing work abroad. And it was always, you should. And actually, you shouldn't, because it's still your business. So if you go down the route of working with your angels, that friends, fools, families collection of people, just remember, it's still your business. They're investing in your business because of what you've done to date. They shouldn't be coming in and unfairly influencing what you're doing with your own invention.
No, absolutely. I think it's important to retain control, day to day, but also, strategically, what the next year looks like, but also what that long-term vision looks like as well. I've seen so many companies get derailed, and they'll get a significant round of funding. They'll be steered how they should be investing this, whether it's a massive development team or an outbound sales team, account based, or whatever it is. And then they'll get to the end of that, and then they'll need to demonstrate particular growth in order to actually still be able to retain that team to get the even bigger next level of investment in this kind of pyramid scheme that you're just forever climbing until you get the exit.
See, pyramid and Ponzi go well together, don't they? There is that. It's almost like some kind of mystical, magical merry-go-round that they persuade you that you should be on, that you should be getting your startup, your seed, your A, your B, your C, that you should be getting these things. And no, you shouldn't be getting these things. Take a look at our organisation. Let's say we work on this facilitative leadership basis. And what that means is I tell all my stakeholders what I want to achieve in the future. And I invite them to tell me how we can get there. So it's not a dictatorial approach that says this is what we're going to do and this is how we're all going to do it. It's this is what I want to achieve. You are my advisors, you are my aides, you are my, when they're starting to get a point of view, are my employees. You tell me how we're going to get there, and you tell me what you are going to do in that process. So if you look at the OKR model of objectives and key results, that's basically what it is. It's facilitative leadership. So I've said to everybody, I want us to be turning over X in 2025, 26.
Yeah.
And I want the business to be valued at this in 2025, 26. Tell me how I can get that valuation. And then you leave it to your IP people and your partnership people and your sales people and your tech dev people to tell you what they're going to do to contribute to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
Now, at no point have I said, I hope a VC can help me do this. There's also another thing as well, is that you can slog your guts out. You may own, let's say, as a founder, you may have 30% of your business as a founder, and you've hit 10 million. And you've got an investor saying, well, you've got to slog your guts out. I'll buy a bit more equity off you here, slog your guts out a bit more, and I'll get you to X million plus a couple of more percent. You may be slogging your guts out for not much more money.
Yeah.
So just remember that, most people have a limited life and they have a limited amount of money they can spend. This mad desire to be a unicorn, what's it worth? I mean, do you want to be Uber? Do you want to be Airbnb? Do you want to be Tesla? Do you want to be WeWork? Because to me, there are ethical issues of those businesses that far outweigh my desire to be called a unicorn, a fictional magical creature,
Yeah.
or a hippo, which is possibly more likely. So just remember at all times, what are you doing it for? We're not doing it so that we can. The measurement of our success isn't going to be the size of our bank account. The measurement of our success is that we have seriously upset psychometric companies. So there's the irritation factor in there. I want to be able to go into London with my kids and my son sees a sign on the side of a bus talking about therapy for all, and it's our company. I want to go to a party where somebody said a friend or a relative of mine used your technology and it actually helped them step back from thinking about suicide. They're your successes, not, oh, look, I'm now worth an extra 100,000 even though I haven't seen my family for a month.
No, absolutely. And I think that comes down to kind of what you started talking about, which is going for that high-hanging fruit. It is genuinely solving that problem in a very different way.
Yeah, and it irritates people. We are referred to as subversives rather than disruptors, and I'm more than happy with that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good word, and I think so many companies, seek to be disruptive or self-describe themselves as disruptive. But I don't think it's something you can self-describe. I think it's something that is evident by the reactions you get from the customers and from the incumbents, the people that are there at the moment.
Yeah, there's this is probably only the ever time I would refer to this person, but there's a quote by Alan Sugar where he said, if you have to be described as if you have to describe yourself as an entrepreneur, you're not an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's the same with anybody who says their technology is disruptive is naive, because we're in a world where unique selling point rarely occurs anymore. Because if it's a good idea, someone's going to copy it. Like I say, somebody thought that it was good to have CBT therapy apps, and Woebot's got theirs on GitHub, and so everybody's doing it. So it's not disruptive. Disruptive might be if SAP or Oracle said that we're going to give away all of our software for free forever to every company in the world. That's disruptive, because no one's going to emulate that one. But that just doesn't get done. So it's a bit of it's one of those BS words that can be it used to be investor friendly, but even investors now are kind of wise to the fact that it's just a nothing word. But but we had somebody within the military refer to us as subversive, and I thought, I'll have that. If you could do that as a LinkedIn testimonial for me, I'll be quite happy.
Absolutely. No, certainly happy to do that. So, I guess in terms of the business now, then you've obviously mentioned, kind of launch plans, coming up pretty soon. What does the kind of the next steps look like for the business and the product or set of products?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I can't tell you about because it's highly sensitive, and dare I say, it's subversive. There are key areas we're working on. Obviously, it's the power of the psychologist, the therapist, and the conversationer. They're the three core areas. But underpinning a lot of that is also the immense capability you have within the area of psycholinguistic data analytics. So as a very broad example, let's say you're having a conversation with somebody in a call center online. On the screen, you'd actually have the sound wave of the conversation on the screen, because all calls are recorded for training purposes, as we all know. So it's on the screen, but underneath, we're able to show the points of anxiety, stress, depression, undeclared wants, needs, sentiments, emotions running underneath the conversation, even to the point of being able to flag that this is a time for you actually to suggest maybe you stop the call because the caller is in distress, or get off your script and have a more humane conversation with them. The reality of it is that we have the ability to replace every call center agent in the world with a piece of technology that can have unscripted generative conversations that solve and also sell. So that's something that's on our mind. Equally on our mind is the ability to remove every transactional middle manager in every organization in the world. If your skills are transactional rather than relationship based, then we don't need you. So that's some of the bigger fish that we have, and some very Goliath fish underneath that. But in terms of what we're doing next, I mean, we've run this as a lean enterprise. So anything that's non-core and non-strategically critical has been outsourced. And that is everything. So we've run the business on 3 people. And we've built this technology on 3 people. Ian is the CTO and is in a very unique position as somebody who is psychologist, commercially minded, and has got the development skills. So, that's a Venn diagram. He's slap bang in the middle of that. Not many people are that. So much like Apple did with the development of the iPhone, where they compartmentalized the development of key parts of that tech to such a point that the companies who manufactured it didn't realize they were actually helping to make an iPhone. That's the approach we've taken with our code development. It's all discrete code blocks, and we've offshored them, primarily India, obviously, but also into such places as Spain, Portugal, at one point a couple of years back, and before sanctions came into place, that would have been in Moscow as well. So we had a global approach to it. If you had the capability, then we didn't really care where you were based. But what we're now doing for the next phases in the resourcing plan is that we'll be building a development team with Litha Labs, which is where Ian's located in Edinburgh, and it's a hybrid working model. So it's either going to be working from the place in Edinburgh or remote. It makes no particular odds to us. And that minesweeper thing I talked about of clearing the way for the talent, which would be accounts, HR, product, customer experience, etc. That's going to be based from Oxford. And we'll be fully furnishing everybody's home office so that it is not just fully functional, but it's also something that is comfortable and safe, etc. And that does include covering things like utilities and connectivity at a time when people are maybe a bit concerned about what the hell's going on out there in a big wide world. And beyond that, we've got about 35 separate pieces of IP at the moment. So we're doing quite well on our IP portfolio, and that's growing. So our trade secret protection system that we've got in place needs to be as robust and productive as the R&D function, because that will also influence any valuation on the business. It's not just how many clients you've got. It's when the founders sell and leave, what are they leaving behind? Yes, they've left behind an SLT that can run the business, but it's the crown jewels. The crown jewels is your IP.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's good to make sure you have, whatever IP protections you can, especially with something so, I won't use the word disruptive, but something that is going in, at that deep level as we've talked about before, and isn't just, a lazy clone of what's already out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you went to the other 20,000 minus 2 of these mental health app organisations, and you said, "So show me some of your algorithms," they haven't got any.
Yeah,
it's all style and no content. They just haven't got any. And so it's build your own IP, because that is your ultimate value. As a business, we're probably still very much of an R&D business, so we will probably end up being very much of a property company, a propco, and then go into partnerships, as I say, for the verticals. Yeah. So our business is creating and protecting our intellectual property. That's where we see a value. We had one investment advisor come to us and said, "I doubt you'll ever make any profit, but you'll be worth billions because look at Uber," as if that's a good thing. And I said, "Well, can't we actually develop a brilliant technology and then prove its capability by selling it to companies, so we make profit and have good IP?" I just don't understand the the rationale that says you can not make a profit and you can be worth a fortune. I am so elderly that I remember the 90s tech bubble, and I saw how businesses carried themselves during that time, and it was obscene and it was wasteful. And like I said, I'm from Warsaw. I come from an area full of factories, and I've never seen any of these factories say, right, we're going to sell equity in our factory. They just keep on keeping on, doing a good job, making good stuff, and that is enough. And sometimes that should be all it is. That should be enough. So, I mean, I've got lessons learned from my time over the years. I guess some of the key things would be that actively seek to be criticised. Seek it out. In those early days, you want critique. You want people to say that you suck. Because then when you go back and you've answered all their questions, you've shown them that you listened to them and you did something about it. Which means that those people who criticise you from the get-go may end up becoming some of your advocates and clients. You should be getting criticised by incumbents. If you're going into a new market and you're not getting criticised for something, you're not doing it right. You are not annoying people enough. And if you want to call yourself disruptive, there should be an incumbent who feels disrupted. So I'd say actively seek to be criticised. I would say don't feel so compelled to find one problem and one solution, as per a Sequoia pitch deck, because life's too dynamic for that, And also, if you go into an organisation and you say, do you have a problem with widgets? And they go, no, well, that's the end of your call. But if you say, do you have a problem with widgets? And they say no, and you say, brilliant, I didn't think you did, but what about doohickeys instead? Then at least you're extending the conversation. You're giving yourself more chance. If you've done all the slog of getting into a client to have that kind of conversation, and you've immediately closed it down because you've got one problem, one solution, life's more dynamic than that. Anyone that gives you advice is probably doing it out of some kind of bias. So, as I say, outside of mentorship. So understand why that advice is being given to you. If you then make the decision to go with it after that, then fine. But you need to step back from the hype of the American models and the VC models, because there is more out there than just that. So investment isn't the only route. There are grants. There's various awards. Debt equity works just as well with people. And there's some very interesting there's one debt equity organisation I'm aware of stateside. It's to do with social impact, and they do all kinds of deals where for the first 2 or 3 years there's a moratorium on repayments, etc., etc. So be creative where you go for your funding, but don't just go to the default, almost the lazy, quote unquote, option of going down the VC route, because it's painful. They are painful. So I guess my last thing is, I had a call this week from a member of our advisory board, and he said the problem is investors don't understand what you're doing, but your clients do. And I said, well, yeah, so it's the investor's problem then, eh?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great perspective. I think there's a lot for entrepreneurs, founders, execs, whether you're at a startup or scale up stage, to take from this conversation. And I think, a lot of it, comes to having that confidence, having that belief, and sticking to that and not being led astray, like you say, with a lot of models and other people telling you how your business is supposed to work, how it is supposed to get access to funding, how it is supposed to grow, how it is supposed to solve problems, what problems it's supposed to solve. So, no, thank you very much for taking the time today. I'm sure we will have you on again to have more conversations and find out how things have developed. But no, massively appreciate it. I'm sure everyone listening to will as well.
No, it's the last couple of sessions of speaking to you, Matt. It's been very very interesting and eye-opening. And I think a lot of founders just wonder if they're on their own with it all. Is it just me who thinks like this, or is it just me that worries about X? And I think that what you're doing of becoming almost like a lightning rod for people to talk about this, we can create a new kind of tech founder culture that's focused on brilliant products, brilliant clients, changing the world, and not giving our money to people who just spend other people's money.
Absolutely, no. Thank you. And thank you again for taking the time. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside the Scale Up. Remember, for the show notes and in-depth resources from today's guest, you can find these on the website insidethescaleup.com. You can also leave feedback on today's episode, as well as suggest guests and companies you'd like to hear from. Thank you for listening.